Welcome to VSOW. Today we're embarking on a really compelling narrative. We're diving deep into the profound, multifaceted world of gardening and urban green spaces. Our mission as your guides is to navigate a stack of fascinating sources. We want to reveal how tending to green spaces is actually far more than just a simple pastime.
Mm.
It's really this intricate web connecting things like climate resilience, social justice, urban planning, economic disparities,
Mhm.
even radical political
It
acts.
touches on so much.
It really does. So we're here to meticulously unpack these diverse perspectives, pull out the most important insights, and help you, our curious listener, understand the surprising facts and the wider implications of our relationship with the natural world right within our own communities.
Absolutely. It's about exploring those varied and wider lenses, looking at the humble garden, but also that expansive urban green space.
Exactly. So let's start by grounding ourselves in the most intimate connection with nature, the personal garden. Far from being merely decorative, these spaces are increasingly viewed as, well, vital tools for tackling some of our most pressing global challenges. Let's unpack how these individual gardening efforts contribute to resilience and maybe offer a lens for understanding complex systems, starting right in our own backyards.
Yeah, it's truly insightful how the University of Maryland Extension frames this idea of climate resilient gardening. They present it not just as, an optional hobby, but as a truly crucial adaptation strategy, especially in a world facing increasingly difficult and unpredictable conditions from climate change.
Right.
The core idea is really about empowering individuals, helping them enhance their garden's capacity to adapt to and recover from these new realities, effectively creating these little micro ecosystems that can withstand environmental shocks.
That phrase, climate resilient, it really jumps out. It sounds like it's about much more than just getting a good harvest.
Uh-huh.
Could you break down what makes a garden truly resilient in today's climate? What are some of those specific environmental shifts you mentioned, and how exactly do they challenge us in the backyard?
Absolutely. The Maryland Extension specifically highlights several key impacts we're already seeing.
Uh-huh.
And these impacts are becoming more common, more severe. We're talking about everything from more variable and extreme weather patterns, that sudden, intense downpours, then maybe long droughts right after, to increased flooding in some areas, intense heat waves baking our cities, unseasonably warmer winters messing with plant cycles,
Mm-hmm.
and also they'll call full springs.
False Springs, what's that?
Yeah, these are particularly insidious. This is where you get a few warm days early on, tricking plants into budding,
Mm.
and then a late frost comes and just wipes out all that new growth. It's devastating. So these aren't just abstract ideas. They directly affect plant health, the local wildlife that depends on them, even our own well-being in these spaces.
Oh.
To address this, the approach is kind of twofold: mitigation and adaptation.
Okay.
Mitigation involves choosing practices that actively reduce greenhouse gas emissions,
Mm.
tackling the root cause. While adaptation is more about modifying gardens so they can thrive despite these changing conditions, ensuring they remain productive, healthy, and frankly, places we enjoy.
That makes sense.
And this framework is really vital because it shows how individual actions, they add up. They contribute to a more sustainable and robust landscape for everyone.
It's incredible how that framework connects individual action to such a huge challenge. So, for the everyday gardener listening right now, what are some of the most impactful, maybe even counterintuitive practical steps they can take? How can they make their backyard part of this bigger solution? I imagine it goes beyond just getting your hands dirty.
Oh, definitely. The University of Maryland Extension outlines several very practical actions that go way beyond just planting a flower. First, and maybe most directly impactful, is growing some of your own food.
Right, food miles.
Exactly. It dramatically cuts down on the food miles your produce travels. That lowers the carbon footprint from transport, packaging, refrigeration, all of it. Plus, it enhances personal and community food security, makes you less reliant on these complex, sometimes fragile supply chains.
Okay, what else?
Second, reducing food waste is crucial. And this isn't just about throwing less out. It means thinking about meal planning, using leftovers creatively, and understanding that food rotting in landfills generates significant amounts of methane, a really potent greenhouse gas.
Mm-hmm.
Third, making compost at home. This is like a powerhouse practice.
I keep meaning to start that.
It should. It diverts organic waste from landfills, enriches your soil with vital nutrients, improves its water retention critical during droughts, and importantly, it sequesters carbon. It locks it away in the soil.
Yep.
Finally, adding more biodiversity to your garden. This is fundamental. Plant a variety of native plants.
Why native specifically?
Well, Native plants support local ecosystems. They attract beneficial insects, pollinators, and they create more resilient landscapes overall, better able to withstand pests, diseases, and those changing conditions we talked about. These aren't just one-off tasks, they're ongoing interconnected practices. They collectively enhance the sustainability and resilience of the whole local environment, creating a tangible impact, one garden at a time.
Wow, it really does make you rethink what's happening in your own backyard, doesn't it? That these seemingly small individual acts could have such a profound ripple effect. And it brings to mind another perspective on how a garden can reveal the interconnectedness of things, viewing it as a complex system itself.
That's a perfect segue, actually, because Anne Price's insights really align powerfully with this idea. She underscores that a garden is a living, complex system. Neglecting any single part can have rapid, cascading negative effects. She uses this particularly vivid anecdote about okra.
Okra. Okay.
Yeah, for those unfamiliar, it grows incredibly fast. You might check your okra one day, it's a perfect 2 inches. The very next day, if you don't harvest it right then,
Oh.
it's suddenly a foot long. Tough, stringy, completely inedible.
Ah.
That single act of neglect, failing to pick at the optimal time, it spoils the entire yield from that pod.
The giant okra analogy is fantastic. I can practically picture it turning into a botanical baseball bat. It vividly shows how quickly one small oversight can unravel the whole effort.
It really does, doesn't it? That immediate, almost brutal feedback loop from the garden is such a clear lesson. And when you think about what goes into a successful garden, it's not one thing, it's a myriad of interconnected tasks. Meticulous soil prep, strategic planting, precise fertilizing, consistent watering, diligent weeding, proactive pest control, careful disease management, and of course, timely harvesting.
So many moving parts.
Exactly. Price emphasizes neglect any part of it and things go sideways, often quickly and severely. And this isn't just about plant care. It serves as this powerful metaphor for community-level systems change.
How so?
Well, too often, in our desire to help, we define systems change merely as a new program, like a feeding initiative or tutoring or a financial literacy class. And while these individual programs might be desperately needed, Price argues they alone will not address the underlying issues needed to lift people out of poverty.
They're treating symptoms, not the disease.
Precisely. They treat symptoms, not the root cause. It's like just watering a plant without considering the soil health, the sunlight, whether it's being choked by weeds.
Right.
To truly achieve lasting systems change in a community, we need a holistic approach. We need to drill down to those underlying root causes. It's about cultivating the conditions for lasting well-being, not just providing temporary relief. That can sometimes be like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound.
So how do we evaluate if an initiative is actually doing that deeper work?
Price proposes a set of critical questions for evaluating community initiatives, questions that encourage this deeper, more analytical perspective. She challenges us to ask, is your initiative truly shifting, changing, transforming the fundamental dynamics? Is it addressing root causes and working with multiple systems, not just one siloed problem? Is it digging to get to the social and political determinants of health, the structural factors that really shape well-being?
Okay.
And finally, is it cultivating the conditions to support children and families in a sustainable, empowering way? These questions compel us to think systemically. Just like a gardener must consider every interconnected element of their plot for a healthy harvest, not just focus on one struggling plant.
It's the difference between reacting to problems and proactively designing for flourishing.
Exactly that.
Moving from the personal plot, let's turn our attention now to community gardens. These shared green spaces that sprout in neighborhoods, often with incredibly noble intentions. But as our sources reveal, these communal havens are also, well, fertile ground for complex social dynamics, sometimes bringing unexpected tensions and challenging our ideals.
This is where the research by Kelsey Poljacek and Rebecca Walker on community gardens in Minneapolis becomes incredibly insightful and, frankly, vital. They highlight the crucial role these gardens play in providing access to fresh food in marginalized communities, directly addressing what they powerfully term food apartheid.
Food apartheid, that's a strong term.
It is. And what's particularly striking, what immediately grabs your attention, is the central question posed by Nancy, a garden leader in their study. She asks, is this a gentrified kind of thing?
Wow.
It's not a casual observation. It immediately sets up the core tension, the complex social dynamics at play within these seemingly idyllic spaces. It forces us to look beyond the surface.
That's a powerful question, and it really challenges that often idealized image of community gardens. It sounds like Nancy is drawing a crucial distinction, not just about the presence of food, but its quality and accessibility.
She absolutely is, and it's a critical distinction. Nancy clarifies that her community experiences food apartheid, not merely a food desert.
What's the difference there?
The nuance is profound. A food desert implies a simple lack of grocery stores, like a void. But Nancy explains that even with stores physically present, there's a significant lack of quality food. She illustrates this powerfully with her own experience. At local stores, she says, the produce is crap.
Mm-hmm.
Now she, being privileged enough to have a car and money, has a choice to go elsewhere, to seek out better options. But she quickly reminds us, many in her neighborhood don't have that privilege. They don't have that choice.
Right.
So in her predominantly black neighborhood of North Minneapolis, her garden becomes a lifeline. It provides fresh, free produce and access to fresh, organic food to underserved residents. It's not just filling a void, it's providing dignity and a better standard of living.
That's a direct, tangible response to a very real need. And I can only imagine how deeply personal this issue must be for her, given her history.
It's incredibly personal,
Yeah.
which makes her dedication even more resonant. Nancy shares this deeply powerful anecdote. It really brings the concept of food insecurity to life. She recounts how her mother relied on food stamps, how she could only make infrequent grocery trips by bus, a grueling, time-consuming effort. And she had absolute no choice in the quality of produce available.
Just had to take what was there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She had to take what was there, often wilted or poor quality, because it was all that was accessible and affordable. This personal history underscores the immense, almost revolutionary value of her community garden. It acts as a direct intervention against these systemic inequalities, offering a healthier alternative, fostering community, providing a measure of food sovereignty that was denied to her own family for so long.
It's a very human story behind a critical social issue.
It really is. It touches generations.
While community gardens undeniably provide critical resources and foster community, they also navigate this challenging landscape of urban change. The Minneapolis study uncovers a profound paradox. These green spaces can be both a powerful solution to existing inequalities and unintentionally a catalyst for new ones.
This leads us directly into the complex and often counterintuitive concept of green gentrification.
Green gentrification, okay.
It describes how efforts to beautify and green urban areas, while undeniably well-intentioned, often beneficial for the environment and public health, can inadvertently increase neighborhood value. This drives up housing costs and ultimately displaces the very communities they initially aimed to serve.
How does that happen?
Community gardens, in this context, can unfortunately become these visual cues, signaling the onslaught of new coffee shops, yoga studios, breweries, and the rise of living costs.
Ah, I see.
They become visible indicators of environmental amenities that then feed into market forces, making a neighborhood significantly more attractive to wealthier newcomers, often at the expense of long-term residents.
So a garden, meant to be a haven, a symbol of growth, can paradoxically become this harbinger of displacement, a sign that change is coming, and maybe not for everyone. This sounds like a particularly acute issue in a city like Minneapolis. Can you give us some context on why it's such a focal point there?
Minneapolis provides a truly stark and compelling backdrop for this phenomenon. It's a city renowned for its award-winning outdoor spaces, consistently ranking high for parks, green infrastructure.
Right, they promote that image.
They do. They actively promote an eco-friendly image through progressive politicians and public campaigns. However, simultaneously, its economy, population, and housing costs are rapidly growing, now exceeding cities like Austin and Nashville, on track to rival even Denver and Seattle.
Wow.
But what's absolutely crucial to understand is that Minneapolis is also a deeply segregated city with widening racial disparities. For instance, it ranks a shocking 99th out of 100 largest U.S. metros in the black-white median income gap. And Minnesota ranks 45th out of 50 states for racial integration.
That context is critical.
It really is. It shows how greening policies, while seeming neutral or beneficial, can have profoundly different consequences, often benefiting white residents while putting people of color at a severe disadvantage, potentially exacerbating existing inequalities under the guise of progress.
That's a powerful and disheartening intersection of environmental policy and deep-seated social inequality. How then do communities, especially the most vulnerable, try to resist these powerful, often invisible forces?
This is where the concept of placekeeping becomes incredibly important. It's essentially when residents actively work to preserve the soul and structure of their neighborhood.
Placekeeping.
Yeah, celebrating its history, ensuring long-term residents can stay and thrive. It's a proactive, community-led resistance against displacement. Gardens, in this sense, can serve as vital community gathering places, fostering strong social bonds, mutual support networks.
And materially, too.
Absolutely. Materially, they provide direct food resources. That significantly reduces expenses for residents who are vulnerable to displacement due to rising costs. It gives them a tangible reason and means to remain in their homes. It's a direct way for communities to assert their right to stay, to belong, and to thrive on their own terms, rather than being pushed out.
So it's not just about adding green, it's about who benefits and how it's managed to ensure it serves existing residents. The study must have captured some of these incredibly nuanced perspectives from the ground.
Indeed, the research presents diverse and often conflicting viewpoints from the interviewees. It highlights just how complex this issue is on a human level. One gardener, deeply reflective, wrestled with the question, am I gentrifying my own neighborhood? But she ultimately concluded she was buying back into my own neighborhood by maintaining a communal free garden. Her intentional choice to make it accessible to all, with a strict share what you grow rule, was her deliberate way of resisting gentrification.
Interesting.
Conversely, another interviewee observed rising property taxes and a general shift to middle-class taste in her area. But she felt little connection between her garden and gentrification. She viewed neighborhood improvements as hard-earned progress, not a threat.
So very different takes.
Very different. It clearly shows the relationship between green spaces and gentrification is complicated. Are gardens direct drivers, forms of resistance, or simply side effects of larger market forces? There's no single easy answer. Individual perceptions vary widely.
The idea that gardeners and managers have agency in shaping this impact is a critical takeaway, though. It suggests gentrification isn't inevitable when greening happens. Conscious choices can make a real difference.
Absolutely. The study stresses the paramount importance of intentional management choices. Nancy's decision, for example, to actively avoid membership stuff, the bureaucracy and fees that can exclude lower-income residents, and instead require sharing produce. That's a deliberate strategic move to counter gentrification.
Right, compared to allotment gardens.
Exactly. It stands in stark contrast to more individualistic allotment gardens, where plots are rented, often with fees, and produce is kept private. These intentional choices determine whether a green space reinforces inequalities or actively works to mitigate them, transforming a potential driver of gentrification into a powerful tool for placekeeping, community empowerment, and food justice.
It's about building a space with the community, for the community.
Precisely.
Our journey now expands to the broader urban landscape, where city planners grapple with green spaces on a grander scale, from sprawling parks to intricate greenways. These initiatives are touted for their public health benefits, essential ecological services. However, as we'll explore, they also come with a significant paradox, often inadvertently exacerbating the very environmental injustices they aim to solve.
Yeah, research by Jennifer R. Walsh and her colleagues, published in Landscape and Urban Planning, gives us a really comprehensive picture here. They look at the critical role of urban green spaces, not just for ecological integrity, but fundamentally for public health.
And this includes a wide range of spaces.
A wide spectrum. Everything from traditional sprawling parks and urban forests to less conventional but equally vital spaces like green roofs, street trees, and the community gardens we just discussed. These are really the lungs and sort of the therapeutic spaces of our cities.
It sounds like these spaces are doing a lot of heavy lifting for cities, far beyond just looking pretty. What are some of those critical environmental services that make them so indispensable?
Oh, they offer an impressive array of essential ecosystem services, things we often undervalue. Firstly, they act as natural air purifiers, filtering out harmful pollutants like particulate matter, ozone, actively removing them. They also attenuate noise from busy urban environments, creating quieter zones. Critically, with rising temperatures, they cool urban heat islands, reducing temperatures by several degrees, which is vital during heat waves.
Huge impact.
Huge. They also infiltrate stormwater, acting like giant sponges to prevent flooding and replenish groundwater. And, as we know, some even provide food, enhancing local food security. Specifically, trees are incredibly effective at reducing air pollution by absorbing airborne pollutants. And overall, green cover moderates temperatures, directly reducing the risk of heat-related illnesses, especially for vulnerable populations.
Beyond the sheer environmental benefits, what about the direct impact on human health? How do these green spaces truly contribute to our well-being, physically and mentally?
The public health benefits are quite extensive, multifaceted. First, green spaces are vital sites for physical activity.
Right places to move.
Exactly. Proximity to parks is consistently linked to increased physical activity levels, which in turn reduces the risk of all-cause mortality and a host of chronic diseases, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers. Studies even show children with more access to parks are more physically active, spend more time outdoors, directly addressing concerns like childhood obesity.
And mentally.
Beyond the physical, these spaces offer profound psychological and emotional benefits. Experiences in parks can significantly reduce stress, rejuvenate us from mental fatigue, enhance contemplation, provide a much-needed sense of peace and tranquility amidst urban chaos. There's even this concept called green exercise, physical activity in green spaces, shown to significantly boost mood and self-esteem more effectively than exercising indoors.
So it's not just about getting your steps in, it's about that deep mental and emotional restoration from simply being immersed in a natural setting. That's profound.
Exactly. The evidence is compelling. A Dutch study, for instance, showed that having more green space near homes buffered the impact of stressful life events,
Yes.
suggesting these spaces act as a powerful protective factor for mental health. For children, the developmental benefits are equally compelling. Authors like Richard Louv argue that kids lacking regular access to green space can suffer behavioral problems, what he calls nature deficit disorder. Remarkably, studies also show positive associations between species richness in green spaces and psychological well-being, and even reduce symptoms of ADD in children active in green environments. These aren't just amenities, they're crucial for holistic human development.
It's a compelling, almost irrefutable case for maximizing urban green spaces. But you mentioned potential complexities or risks earlier. What are those? It sounds like it can't be entirely an unalloyed good.
Right. While the benefits are undeniably extensive, we have to acknowledge potential often overlooked health risks. For example, parks located near heavy traffic areas can inadvertently expose users to higher levels of air pollution.
Ah.
If active transport strategies encouraging walking and biking to these parks are implemented without simultaneous robust efforts to reduce pollution in those areas.
Then people could be breathing more bad air.
Exactly. Residents, particularly those in low-income communities who already have higher rates of active transport, could experience adverse health effects due to increased exposure. A study in LA even found park-adjacent neighborhoods, especially in low-income and minority areas, had higher pollution concentrations.
So placement and planning are key.
Absolutely. Placement, design, the surrounding urban environment matters significantly. A green space without proper planning can become a source of exposure, not a haven.
Despite these clear, multifaceted benefits, access to urban green spaces is starkly and not equitably distributed. This disparity, as our sources reveal, forms a crucial, often overlooked aspect of environmental justice.
This is a consistent and deeply troubling finding across the literature. Access to these health-promoting, life-enhancing resources is often stratified by deep-seated socioeconomic and ethno-racial factors. It's an undeniable environmental injustice issue at the heart of our cities.
So who has less access?
Racial and ethnic minorities, along with low-income individuals,
Yeah.
typically have significantly less access to quality green spaces, well-maintained parks, or structured recreational programs compared to white or more affluent communities.
Mm.
And it's not just about the presence of green space. It's profoundly about the quality, safety, and usability of what is available, which often tells a very different story.
So it's a matter of both quantity and quality, and it often appears to follow historical lines of segregation and economic inequality.
Exactly. Geographically, people of color and low-income earners are frequently concentrated in urban cores or inner-ring suburbs where green space is either glaringly scarce or, if present, poorly maintained, underfunded, and often unsafe. Conversely, healthier, wealthier households tend to reside in areas with abundant, well-serviced, meticulously maintained green spaces, often on the suburban periphery where lush landscapes are the norm. And this disparity is further exacerbated by funding patterns. Public and nonprofit funding for parks and recreation often follows these same race and class contours, meaning low-income communities of color have substantially fewer resources for their green infrastructure, perpetuating a cycle of disadvantage. It's systemic.
Given that disparity, it seems like simply measuring how close someone lives to a park might not tell the whole story about whether they actually benefit from it. There must be deeper barriers.
That's a critical point. And when researchers are increasingly emphasizing simple GIS measures proximity, acreage often falls significantly short. They may not account for the actual characteristics of a park. Is it just a concrete slab with a few trees, or a vibrant, well-equipped space? What programs does it offer? Or crucially, potential congestion.
Congestion in parks.
Yeah, studies reveal park congestion is more acute in low-income and minority neighborhoods. So while a park might be accessible on a map, if it's overcrowded, poorly maintained, or lacks facilities, it diminishes the experience and its health benefits. Moreover, there are often deeper reasons for non-use, even when parks are physically present. Perceptions of unsafety due to crime or neglect, or the feeling that a park belongs to another group, creating exclusion.
Based on history.
Often rooted in historical patterns of segregated park systems and broader ethno-racial formations. A space, even if physically open, isn't truly welcoming or perceived as safe for everyone. The legacy of redlining and discriminatory planning casts a long shadow.
This leads us to that critical and often counterintuitive finding. Efforts to address environmental injustices through urban greening can inadvertently trigger this green space paradox, leading to gentrification and displacement. The very solution becomes a new problem.
This phenomena, often called ecological gentrification, environmental gentrification, or eco-gentrification, is a central and profoundly challenging aspect of urban development. It describes how the very act of creating green amenities to improve a neighborhood, new parks, tree-lined streets, community gardens can increase property values, inflate housing costs, and ultimately displace the long-term, often lower-income residents who were initially meant to benefit.
It's a cruel irony.
It really is. The solution designed to uplift creates a new form of hardship. The green infrastructure, intended to improve public health and ecology, becomes a luxury amenity driving economic exclusion.
It sounds like this isn't a new phenomenon either. There's a historical echo to this kind of outcome.
Absolutely. The source explicitly mentions New York's Central Park as a stark historical example.
Central Park, yeah.
Yeah. When it was conceived and created in the mid-19th century, it was overtly designed to increase land values and open up development opportunities for surrounding areas, explicitly displacing existing communities, reshaping the city's economic geography. This pattern, though perhaps less explicit now, continues. Modern manifestations see developers and planners harness the language of sustainability, green consumption, and ecology to facilitate green space provision and gentrification.
Using green language to drive development.
Exactly. Even smaller, seemingly innocuous, ecologically oriented projects, not just grand parks, can have this effect. The allure of green living, fresh air, beautiful surroundings translates directly into higher market values, attracting new, wealthier residents, changing the neighborhood's character.
To really understand this paradox and how it plays out, I think a concrete example would be incredibly helpful. Where has this been observed prominently recently?
Hangzhou, China, serves as a prominent and fascinating case study, especially in a rapidly urbanizing context. China's seen unprecedented urban population growth, a staggering 431 million increase between 1980 and 2009, leading to widespread environmental pollution, sedentary lifestyles, and rising rates of obesity, diabetes, kidney disease.
Huge challenges.
Huge. And in this context, emergent environmental justice issues are profound. Pollution impacts, hazardous jobs, poor housing quality are disproportionately concentrated among lower-income earners, particularly those without permanent residency under the hukou system.
The household registration system.
Right. It often limits access to urban benefits for migrant workers, ties social services to one's birthplace, creating this distinct class of urban outsiders. Plus, citizen participation in environmental decision-making is historically limited.
So a city facing immense environmental and social challenges where green space is already a critical justice issue for many, what's the situation with green space access in China generally? Density must play a huge role.
You're right, density is major. Green space access is a significant environmental justice issue in China, compounded by history and incredible density. The average green space ratio is quite low, 6.52 square meters per capita.
Compared to the U.S.?
Compared to the U.S. national median of 50.18 square meters per capita. It's a huge difference, despite China having more generous planning standards on paper. It highlights the difficulty of implementation. Hangzhou, however, stands out. It's recognized as a garden city with an incredibly ambitious greening program. They boast 166.5 square kilometers of green space, roughly 40% of the city area. And it keeps growing.
That sounds incredibly impressive, a garden city with huge green space numbers. What specific strategies has Hangzhou used to achieve this, and what have been the initial positive impacts?
They've implemented several ambitious large-scale strategies, aggressively demolishing old factories for new parks,
Wow.
retrofitting green space alongside dilapidated canals, under main roads, along railway lines, finding every available sliver of land, and mass tree planting campaigns. Preliminary research suggests significant positive impacts, like temperature reductions of 436 degrees Celsius in some areas. That's massive for combating urban heat islands. Plus, benefits for air quality and stormwater.
But with all this ambitious greening, does the green paradox still manifest, even in a highly controlled city like Hangzhou? Because it sounds like they're really trying.
It absolutely does. And this is where the paradox becomes incredibly stark. Despite impressive stats and aggressive greening, many of Hangzhou's parks are disappointingly small, with few facilities, often designed for passive recreation or described as mere window dressing for development, not genuinely active usable spaces.
So they look green, but aren't that useful.
Right? They're frequently congested, diluting health benefits.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to find peace or exercise in a crowded, tiny square near a roaring highway. That's the reality for many. Parks near main roads expose users to significant air pollution and noise. There's under-provision of active recreation space for kids and teens in inner-city districts. Unequal access persists in older areas and peripheral communities. And crucially, new studies indicate these greening efforts are inflating property values, potentially leading to gentrification and displacement, even with the smallest green space embellishments in the urban core.
Even the smallest green intervention can kickstart this cycle. What about adaptive reuse projects? Those are often celebrated globally as sustainable solutions. Do they also fall into this paradox?
They absolutely can. It's a critical observation. Consider green alleys, transforming underutilized back alleys into vibrant green infrastructure for walking, biking, play, stormwater management, often with microgyms, a great distributed strategy. Or think of the famous High Line in New York City, converting an abandoned elevated train line into a stunning aerial greenway, attracting millions, fostering biodiversity, lauded examples of sustainable transformation.
The High Line is celebrated globally as a model, but you're suggesting even its success has a significant downside.
What's fascinating is this paradox of success. Even wildly successful projects like the High Line, despite undeniable benefits, can trigger intense gentrification. Property values near the High Line increased by a staggering 103% between 2003 and 2011. Over $2 billion invested in related property development, completely reshaping surrounding neighborhoods.
Wow, 103%.
Huge. Similarly, the Cheonggyecheon Waterway in Seoul, lauded for ecological restoration, also drove up property values, altered commercial infrastructure, displaced long-term residents and businesses. So even when greening efforts are wildly successful ecologically or recreationally, they can still inadvertently contribute to displacement, highlighting the deep complexity of urban transformation, that constant tension between ecological improvement and social equity.
The challenge then becomes, how do we create green spaces that serve environmental and public health goals without causing displacement? This leads us to the critical concept of being just green enough.
This approach is absolutely vital for planners, designers, ecologists committed to equitable development. It seeks to reap the undeniable benefits of urban green space, cleaner air, cooler temps, recreation, while explicitly protecting social as well as ecological sustainability. It's about intentional design and policy to actively prevent that green space paradox and ensure greening truly serves all residents.
So just green enough means more than just adding greenery. It's about how and where it's implemented and, critically, for whose benefit. It sounds deeply community-centric.
Exactly. Drawing on Curran and Hamilton's foundational work in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, Just Green Enough, means designing green interventions shaped directly by community concerns and needs, not just relying on conventional urban design formulas or purely ecological ideals that might be detached from social equity.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, in Greenpoint, working-class residents and gentrifiers actually collaborated. They demanded environmental cleanup of polluted industrial sites. But crucially, they did it in a way that allowed for continued industrial uses and blue-collar work. They deliberately avoided the typical parks, cafes, and a riverwalk model that so often signals gentrification and forces out existing businesses and residents. It was about maintaining the existing social and economic fabric while still improving environmental quality.
That's a profound shift in focus prioritizing existing community needs over a potentially gentrifying aesthetic. What specific strategic interventions support this just green enough philosophy more broadly?
A few key strategies underpin this. First, advocating for small-scale, scattered green space interventions rather than grand, concentrated civic projects.
Why smaller?
Grand projects tend to concentrate resources, attract high-profile development, and more aggressively kickstart gentrification. They become real estate magnets. Smaller, distributed interventions, greening alleys, pocket parks spread access more evenly and can help mitigate speculative development. Second, community-led design and activism are paramount. Challenging powerful real estate interests, even mainstream environmental advocates who might unintentionally overlook social equity. In Toronto, for example, local nonprofits successfully encourage planners to prioritize urban agriculture and community gardens over more traditional rewilding approaches, explicitly connecting restoration to local concerns, food security, job creation, human health, ensuring greening serves immediate pressing needs.
Beyond design and scale, what kind of policy measures can actively counter gentrification when greening happens? Because it sounds like policy is as crucial as plants.
Anti-gentrification policies are absolutely essential. You need an enabling environment. These include robust provision of affordable housing and significant housing trust funds to protect existing residents. Rent stabilization programs are critical to reduce absentee landlordism and shield tenants from soaring rents. Financial incentives for homeownership and shared equity housing projects empower long-term residents to have a stake in an improving neighborhood rather than being priced out. Additionally, protections for local businesses, rent controls, set-asides for local ownership, maintaining industrial uses are vital to preserve the commercial and social fabric, ensuring new green amenities don't just attract chains or trendy cafes for newcomers.
So it's a comprehensive, layered approach, intricately intertwining environmental goals with strong social and economic protections. It really redefines what success looks like in urban greening.
Indeed, it demands a careful, continuous balancing act. Being just green enough requires active collaborative involvement from planners, designers, ecologists, integrating public health, environmental equity, social justice from the start. It also needs robust collaborations between local government and diverse community groups, and a willingness of everyone to challenge powerful real estate interests and conventional development paradigms. The goal is advancing ecological sustainability without sacrificing the social well-being of the very communities intended to benefit. This really raises an important question for all of us, doesn't it? Can we truly achieve impactful greening without worsening inequalities, or is it an inherent tension we must constantly strive to mitigate?
We've seen how gardening can foster personal resilience, how urban greening faces complex social challenges. Now let's dig even deeper into a perspective that positions the garden not just as a space for cultivation or community, but as a site of profound political action, idealism, even rebellion. This is the realm of radical gardening.
It's truly fascinating how George Mackay's radical gardening fundamentally challenges our conventional perceptions. We often think of gardens as tranquil retreats, quiet escapes.
Right.
But Mackay argues they are historically rich with deep political significance, often hidden in plain sight. He opens his work with this powerful, almost provocative statement from the artist Ian Hamilton Finlay. Certain gardens are described as retreats when they are really attacks.
Attacks, wow. That immediately reframes the garden's role. From passive sanctuary to active, even defiant front line.
Exactly. It asks us to look again. Mackay notes this crucial blind spot in historical scholarship. Social historians often ignore gardens as sites of political activity, and conversely, garden historians typically ignore politics, focusing just on aesthetics or horticulture.
Leading to a missed history.
A largely missed history of what he terms horticountercultural politics.
Mm-hmm.
His book delves into the alternate but interwoven meanings of the word plot.
The physical space and the plan.
Right. The physical patch of land, but also the narrative of a conspiracy, a secret plan, a political scheme. Gardens, in this light, become incredibly resonant spaces, embodying notions of utopia, community, activism for progressive social change, peace, environmentalism, identity politics. Paul Gah even describes planting as a form of protest.
Planting as protest. I like that.
It connects the literal earthy act to a much larger political statement. It makes perfect sense, then, that someone like Jamaica Kincaid would insist on a more engaged, less escapist view.
What'd she say?
Mackay highlights Kincaid's incisive question. Why? Must people insist that the garden is a place of rest and repose, a place to forget the cares of the world, to distance yourself from the painful responsibility with being a human being? It's not just rhetorical. It reinforces the idea that garden, far from being an escape, actively demands engagement with nature cycles, with the labor required, and deeply with the social and political realities it reflects. For her, it's a place where we confront our responsibilities.
This sounds like a rich, often hidden tradition of political action through gardening. Can you give us some specific historical examples of how gardening has been explicitly political, even revolutionary?
Oh, there are compelling historical glimpses. Take William Cobbett, the English radical writer. In 1819, he declared that whatever I did had first in view the destruction of infamous tyrants. His gardening, his writings on rural life were intertwined with his fierce political aims.
Hmm.
Even the etymology of propaganda itself is rooted here. From the Latin propagare, meaning to propagate, to grow, linking cultivation to political persuasion. Then there's Bertolt Brecht, the playwright, observing with startling accusatory power that famines do not occur, they are organized by the grain trade, connecting food scarcity directly to systemic injustice.
Hmm.
And a more modern, poignant example. A female Colombian activist on the flower industry said, "Behind every beautiful flower is a death. Flowers grow beautiful while women wither away," revealing the brutal human cost behind idealized beauty and globalized agriculture.
These examples span centuries.
They do. From the 17th century levelers and diggers claiming common land to modern guerrilla gardeners transforming neglected urban spaces, the garden has been a consistent, potent site for radical expression and social critique.
It's clear the garden can be a site of incredibly diverse political expression. But I understand McKay also delves into some of the darker, perhaps more unsettling aspects of this radical potential.
Yes, and this is crucial for a balanced perspective. McKay doesn't shy away from exploring reactionary and xenophobic radicalisms, including the chilling phenomenon of fascist gardening.
Ashes gardening.
Yes, he examines how racist and xenophobic groups continue to use the garden, plants, and planting to spread their ideas, often invoking notions of purity, natural order, or rootedness to justify exclusionary ideologies.
That's disturbing.
It's a sobering reminder. The symbolic power of the garden, like any cultural medium, can be co-opted and twisted for a wide range of ideologies, not all progressive. It's crucial to acknowledge this complexity and challenge these narratives rather than romanticizing the garden's potential.
From this historical intertwining of plants and power, we find modern movements also reevaluating the political dimensions of cultivation, extending this radical spirit to systemic approaches like permaculture.
This is precisely where Terry Leahy's The Politics of Permaculture provides a vital counter-narrative. Bill Mollison, one of permaculture's co-founders, famously suggested in his 1991 documentary Global Gardener that political protests achieve little, and that planting a sustainable food garden is effective grassroots action.
Which sounds kind of anti-political.
It was often interpreted that way,
Yeah.
as focusing purely on individual action. But Leahy challenges this. He argues politics isn't solely channeled through the state or traditional elections. He sees permaculture as a powerful, though often misunderstood, grassroots social movement aimed at deep system change, fundamentally shifting how we interact with our environment and each other.
So it's not anti-political, but redefining where effective political action happens. What exactly is permaculture in this context? What makes its approach unique?
Exactly. Leakey defines permaculture as a worldwide grassroots movement aiming for system change through innovative agriculture and settlement design. At its heart, it's a design science for environmental sustainability, creating self-sustaining human habitats and agricultural systems mimicking natural ecosystems.
And its worldview.
What makes its worldview distinctive is its anticipation of degrowth as an inevitable effect of energy descent, a profound recognition of natural limits to growth, finite resources post-peak oil. It strongly favors decentralized grassroots activism over attempts to control the state. Believing fundamental change must come from the ground up. Its network is polycephalous and open. Multiple centers, decentralized, different from a hierarchy, despite having foundational texts like Mollison's Designer's Manual. It's about designing solutions for communities to adapt and thrive within natural limits.
That anti-political label seems sticky, though, if even a founder suggested it. How does Leakey address that critique within the movement itself? How has that evolved?
He addresses it head-on. While Leahy acknowledges some within permaculture still endorse an overtly anti-political vision, focusing on individual action, he argues that more are moving towards an overtly political engagement now. He suggests the initial anti-politics strategy was partly pragmatic, a way of working within the affordances of the capitalist economy to inaugurate change, demonstrate practical solutions.
Using the system to change the system.
Sort of. This early phase often relied on the discretionary wealth of a middle class that emerged post-war, allowing the movement to grow, experiment, prove its principles on a smaller scale before engaging more broadly with systemic critiques of economic and political structures. A strategic, if sometimes misunderstood, beginning.
So it's a movement rooted in practical design, but holding diverse, evolving visions for a post-capitalist society. What do those visions actually look like?
The movement encompasses a fascinating range. Closest to the foundational texts is town and market bioregionalism, local self-sufficiency within distinct ecological regions, reducing reliance on distant supply chains. A popular vision today hopes for cultural change driving changes in market behavior, ideally backed by strong state regulation for a steady-state economy where growth isn't the primary driver. A minority within permaculture even identify as socialist or anarchist, pushing for more radical transformations of ownership and power.
And in practice.
In practice, permaculture often favors grassroots interventions to prefigure a permaculture economy. Leahy sees these as often being hybrids of the gift economy and capitalism, blending communal sharing with sustainable market practices. These aren't just theories. They manifest in real-world projects, with achievements and difficulties.
It sounds like permaculture, despite its focus on holistic design, hasn't been immune to internal critiques regarding broader social justice issues, especially from diverse global perspectives.
That's absolutely right. Leahy points out permaculture has faced criticism, particularly for its failure to deal with the politics of gender and colonialism adequately, a common critique of many Western environmental movements. However, he emphasizes that strategies developed in the Global South, like the Chukukwa Permaculture Project in Zimbabwe, are vital. They help ground these debates in manifestly material ways.
How so?
These projects often operate where food security, resource access, community empowerment are immediate existential issues, life or death. This forces practitioners to engage with these political dimensions directly, addressing the intersection of ecology, gender, post-colonial justice very practically on the ground, leading to a more nuanced, politically engaged form of the movement that learns from diverse experiences.
This notion of individual action leading to systemic change through the simple act of cultivating life is powerfully echoed by another influential voice, who argues that saving seeds is perhaps the most fundamental political act of all.
This brings us to the profound, deeply philosophical insights of Vandana Shiva. Renowned globally for her impassioned activism against GMOs, globalization, corporate seed patents. She articulates this deeply philosophical yet highly practical view of seed saving as the ultimate political act, a true act of rebellion and preservation.
How does she define a seed? It sounds like it's more than just biology for her.
Far more. For Shiva, a seed is all of the past evolution of the earth, the evolution of human history, and the potential for future evolution. It is an embodiment of culture, shaped by generations of careful selection. She notes how women in traditional societies diversified a single wild grass into 200,000 varieties of rice.
Incredible.
It represents a convergence of human and nature's intelligence, the ultimate expression of life itself.
That's a powerful definition. If a seed holds all that history and potential, then its commercial value, or rather its pricelessness, must be central to her argument against corporate control.
Absolutely. Shiva asserts with great conviction that a seed is priceless, which is precisely why its commodification, its reduction to a patented product controlled by a few corporations, is such an outrage. She points out that every culture believes that destroying seed is the ultimate sin, a violation of life itself. Historically, communities have starved to death rather than eat the seed grain, understanding its profound, irreplaceable value for future life, the continuity of their culture. This underscores that a seed's true worth extends far beyond any market price, making corporate control over seeds a fundamental attack on food security, life, culture, and freedom.
So for Shiva, planting and saving seeds isn't just about agriculture. It's about a much deeper act of reconnecting with nature and healing a profound societal separation from the living world.
That's a core, almost spiritual tenet of her philosophy. She believes every ecological problem comes from this illusion that we are separate from nature, a false construct of the modern industrial mind. The healing, she argues, comes from reclaiming our oneness with the web of life. While some achieve this through meditation or yoga, she emphasizes many more are doing it simply by planting a seed and growing a garden.
Through the act itself.
Through the act itself, you become inextricably linked with the cycles, the regenerative capacity of life. She shares how children she works with talk about the miracle of life, how a tiny seed yields abundance, reinforcing our oneness with the earth, the fundamental elements. It's a direct, embodied experience of interconnectedness.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this idea of diversity versus uniformity seems to be at the heart of her political message against the industrial food system.
It's perhaps her most potent political statement. Every expression of diversity is an expression of freedom, and every expression of monoculture is an expression of coercion. She elaborates that self-organized systems, cultural, human, natural ecosystems inherently evolve in diversity. We aren't identical as humans. We evolved in freedom, variety. In contrast, uniformity is constructed from the outside, inherently coercive, held together by external control, often chemical inputs. She gives a vivid, chilling example. A farm of only Roundup-ready soya is, to her, a battlefield where chemical warfare is going on.
A battlefield.
A landscape designed to kill everything green except the patented crop, decimating soil organisms, beneficial insects, all natural diversity. This, she argues, destroys the crop's natural ability to manage itself, resist disease, making it utterly dependent on the very chemicals and corporations that created it.
That paints a very clear and disturbing picture. How then does she propose we counter the enormous power of corporate giants like Monsanto, who thrive on this uniformity and control?
Her strategy is elegantly simple, yet profoundly radical. Aligning ourselves with the forces of life. For her, the act of seed saving is such an important political act in this time, an act of direct resistance. She emphasizes industry seeks absolute control over life itself, unwilling to tolerate farmers with freedom in their seed supply or seeds that grow on their own terms, independent of patents and corporate control.
So saving seeds is resistance.
Exactly. By saving seeds, sharing them, cultivating biodiversity, communities actively resist this corporate monopolization, reclaim their food sovereignty, literally cultivating the seeds of freedom and a different future. It's a declaration of independence for the farmer and the eater.
In a world where these corporations wield so much power, how does Vandana Shiva maintain her energy and hope for change, especially given the scale of the challenge?
She finds immense inspiration and energy in the growing global awareness of the illegitimacy of this power. While power is more concentrated, she points to the increasing number of grassroots movements, protests, individuals actively building alternatives. Her joy and energy, she explains, come from the positive work of seed saving, promoting peaceful agriculture, working with an incredibly diverse group: farmers, non-farmers, bankers, software pros, filmmakers, all realizing the fundamental importance of food and seed.
That must be inspiring.
She shares an example of a young man working with ex-convicts to spread gardens in urban areas, illustrating how gardening can be a powerful tool for healing violence, fostering community, creating new economic opportunities, restoring dignity. This widespread grassroots engagement, to her, is the wellspring of hope, the true unstoppable force for systemic change.
We've journeyed through the varied landscapes of gardening, from cultivating personal resilience and understanding systemic connections, to navigating the complex social dynamics of community spaces, exposing the paradoxes of urban greening, and finally embracing the radical potential of a single seed. What stands out is the profound and often overlooked power inherent in our relationship with green spaces, transforming them from simple plots into powerful agents of change.
Indeed, this deep dive powerfully reveals that from climate adaptation to corporate control over life itself, the garden, in all its forms, is never truly neutral. It consistently acts as a mirror reflecting our deepest societal values, a battleground for competing interests, and a vital canvas for our collective future. This intricate understanding underscores that engaging with green spaces, whether a tiny backyard or a vast urban park, is, at its heart, an active engagement with the wider world itself, demanding our attention, our care, our critical thought.
Considering the myriad ways green spaces shape our lives, from personal health to global politics and economic justice, what new plots can we cultivate, both literally and metaphorically? How can we foster a more just, resilient, and connected future? What responsibility does this deepened understanding place on each of us, not just as gardeners, but as citizens shaping our shared environment? If you found this deep dive thought-provoking, we encourage you to subscribe to VSOW, leave a like, and share your comments with us. We really do love hearing your insights and questions. Thank you for listening to VSOW.